Last week, I talked about two different experiences I had with two different men, where rejection, or even just the perception of rejection, seemed to trigger really intense emotional reactions. And what stuck with me afterwards was how disproportionate both reactions felt. In both situations, it felt like these men had created entire emotional narratives in their heads that had very little to do with reality. And when reality didn't match the fantasy, the response became explosive. In the first story about Immature Ian, I actually was interested in him romantically. And I genuinely thought things had been going well. So I was really shocked when something as small as me taking my hair out of a ponytail after he had complimented me earlier was interpreted as this massive rejection. And when I look back on that situation now, it honestly makes me realize how fragile some people's egos can be around dating and attraction. Because on a deeper level, it also bothered me that something as harmless and personal as how I chose to wear my own hair somehow became emotionally charged to him. Like, no one should feel entitled to dictate how another person presents themselves physically. And in the second story about nice guy Nate, I had already made it very clear multiple times that I wasn't interested in him romantically. But instead of accepting that and moving on, he seemed completely determined to keep pursuing this version of reality he had already created in his head. And I think what unsettled me the most was realizing that he seemed genuinely okay with the idea of being in a relationship with someone who didn't actually want him back. For me, mutual enthusiasm is such a foundational part of love and attraction. So the idea of trying to convince someone into loving you or hoping they'll eventually learn to love you feels deeply uncomfortable. And on a deeper level, it made me realize that what I wanted barely seemed to factor into the equation at all. It felt like the focus was entirely on what Nate wanted, and whether I emotionally consented to that reality was secondary. And I think that taps into a much larger issue, where some people don't just feel entitled to your time, attention, affection, access to you. They sometimes even resent you for saying no. And unfortunately, those weren't even the most extreme experiences I've had with rejection. Because the third story I want to tell you about today is the one that honestly changed the way I moved through the world the most. And what makes this situation different is that this wasn't someone I had dated or someone I had ever romantically been involved with in any way. This was someone who presented himself as a friend, and not even a close friend at that. At first, the dynamic felt completely harmless. We even had 6 or 7 mutual friends. But this was the first situation that made me realize how quickly rejection can escalate into something genuinely unpredictable when someone's self-worth is deeply tied to external validation. Because what started as a completely normal night eventually escalated into physical aggression in less than a minute. And to this day, every time I think about this situation, I remember how quickly things went from fun to uncomfortable to genuinely scary to a very ironic instant karma. So, let's get into it. For those of you who don't know, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which very much embodied the whole work hard, play hard stereotype. The academics were intense, and during the week, everyone basically lived in the library, pulling all-nighters, trying to survive their coursework. But on the weekends, people partied hard. And one of the best parts of UW-Madison is that the campus sits between two lakes. So during the summer, the entire energy of the city changes. Everyone wants to be outside, people are constantly boating, tanning, hanging around the Memorial Union, sitting on those colorful chairs by the water. In the summer between my sophomore and junior year, my friends and I fully leaned into that lifestyle. We stayed in Madison and spent most of our days out on the docks at Lake Mendota, tanning, listening to music, and just trying to maximize our fun before the fall semester rolled around. And one afternoon, while we were out by the water, this really attractive guy pulls up in a speedboat and invites us to come hang out. The boat probably fit like 15 people. The music was blasting, there were drinks everywhere, everyone was very attractive, and everyone seemed friendly. It was peak summer vibes. And pretty quickly, it became clear that all the guys on the boat already knew each other, while the girls were basically 3 separate friend groups that had all been invited out that day. But everyone was social. Everyone went to UW-Madison, and it was just a really good time. So after the first day on the boat, my girlfriends and I slowly became friends with this whole group over the course of the summer. We would get invited to their parties, go boating pretty often, and sometimes we would meet up at the bars. And for a while, it honestly just felt like one big social circle. But although most of the guys in the group were genuinely very fun, friendly, and easygoing, there was always one guy who felt a little different from everyone else. Let's call him Aaron. And you guessed it, the story is about Aaron. Aaron didn't actually go to UW-Madison. He was a couple of years older than the rest of us, and socially, he never really seemed to fit naturally into the group dynamic. And a lot of the other guys kind of treated him like the butt of their jokes. And from the girls' perspective, Aaron just gave off this like beta loser energy, a term we coined in his honor and still use to this day. He was super skinny, he had a buzz cut, he smoked cigarettes constantly, and he was the only one in the group that smoked. And he always seemed kind of jittery and intense. And while I obviously can't prove this, I'm pretty sure he was regularly skiing, if you know what I mean. And I want to be clear that I'm not just ragging on his appearance. I only included it because it's relevant to the story. Also, it was his attitude that made people uncomfortable, not his appearance. Because while the other guys mostly just seemed interested in having fun and making everyone feel welcome, Aaron would randomly make really rude comments for no reason. I remember one time he told a girl on the boat that she was only a 7 because she needed to lose weight, while the girl was objectively gorgeous and very fit. And everyone around him was just kind of sitting there like, why would you even say that out loud? And one time, he even tried shaming a girl because he knew she had been out on 2 dates that week with 2 different guys. And I was pleasantly surprised that the other guys on the boat rushed to her defense and told Aaron to stop being a jerk. So overall, none of the girls really liked Aaron very much. And honestly, I mostly tried to keep my distance from him. But the reason he was always around was because he lived with the guy who owned the boat, who was basically the center of the whole social circle. And their apartment was this huge corner penthouse where all the parties happened. So naturally, Aaron was always there too. And to give Aaron some credit, the one thing he did seem to contribute socially was that he somehow knew every bouncer at every popular club. So especially during the summer, when places would hit capacity and the lines got insane, Aaron was usually the person who could get the whole group inside. But again, I just want to stress that I never really hung out with Aaron one-on-one. I generally tried to avoid him whenever possible. But because all of our social circles overlapped, it was inevitable that I kind of kept seeing him around. Anyway, one Friday night, my roommate and I are getting ready to go out. We hadn't made plans with the larger group yet, but we figured we'd probably run into them somewhere during the night anyway. So we do our hair, we do our makeup, we grab some food, and we head down to State Street, where all the bars are. And at around 10:30 or 11, Aaron texts us telling us to come meet up with everyone at a bar called Mondays. Mondays was a super popular spot, and my roommate and I had been there plenty of times before. So we're like, yeah, sure, let's go to Mondays. As we're walking up, we can already see there's a huge line outside. It's loud, it's crowded, it's chaotic, but Aaron is standing near the front, talking to the bouncer, and they immediately let us skip the line and come inside. So my roommate and I head to the bar to grab drinks while we scan the room looking for the rest of the group. The place is absolutely packed. So naturally, we're standing there for a while, and then out of nowhere, the bartender brings us 2 shots that had apparently been sent over by a couple of guys at the other end of the bar. So we accept the shots, and the guys come over to introduce themselves, and they seem genuinely fun and friendly. And then Aaron walks in. He sees us standing there talking to these guys, and he immediately gets weirdly possessive. He literally looks at one of the guys and he goes, "Bro, they're with me." And internally, my roommate and I are both like, "Sir, we are absolutely not with you. We only came here because we thought the rest of the group was gonna be here." So one of the guys kind of laughs awkwardly and he goes, "Wait, are you dating both of these girls?" And we're immediately like, "No, he's not." And the second we say that, Aaron lightly shoves the guy in the chest. He literally shoves the guy and goes, "Bro, I'm gonna fight you." Now here's the thing. The shots guy is 6'3". He's muscular, he's very calm. He could have snapped Aaron in half if he wanted to. But instead, he just calmly goes, "I'm not your bro. Please don't touch me. I'm literally just trying to have a chill night." And Aaron shoves him again. And again, the guy is still super calm and he goes, "Seriously, relax. Let's just have a good night." At this point, my roommate and I are standing there with the friend. And honestly, the situation still feels comical because Aaron is acting so irrational out of nowhere. And I guess, just to show some good faith, the shots guy goes, "You know what? I'm getting shots for everyone, including Aaron," which was very generous considering the situation. So he asks me what kind of shots we should get. And naturally, I say peach Ciroc because I was obsessed with it back then. And the guy tells the bartender 5 shots of peach Ciroc. And immediately Aaron goes, "No, I don't want that. I want a whiskey neat, and I'll pay for it myself." What? Aaron is being so crazy and trying to create this awkward and charged environment. But the shots guy is so calm and unbothered. Anyway, the shots and the whiskey finally come out. We all go to clink our glasses and say cheers, and Aaron refuses to participate. Everyone takes their shots. Aaron just sits there. He's sipping his whiskey, he's scowling, he has a sour look on his face. And then, out of nowhere, he suddenly yells, "Fuck you all." And he chucks the whiskey glass directly at us. And this wasn't some light plastic cup. It was a full-on heavy glass whiskey tumbler. But because he was either completely wasted, completely uncoordinated, or both, the glass misses all of us entirely. Instead, it flies past us and shatters against the wall behind the bar, literally inches away from the bartender. And immediately the bartender starts screaming at Aaron to get out. But instead of leaving, Aaron starts yelling back that he's not going anywhere. So, within literally seconds, two massive bouncers come over and tell him he needs to leave the bar immediately. Instead of cooperating, he spits on the floor. At that point, the bouncers each grab one of his arms and literally start dragging him out while the entire bar watches. And just to paint the picture for you, Aaron is facing backwards, opposite the direction they're dragging him. He's sandwiched between these two huge bouncers, while his feet are basically scraping across the floor. And the entire time, he's staring directly at us, full eye contact and smiling. He's smiling. And the thing is, my roommate and I are still standing at the bar, but we're near the front windows of Mondays. These huge glass windows that face State Street. So we can literally watch the bouncers drag him outside onto the sidewalk. And because it's summer in Madison, there are police cars stationed all up and down State Street already. So one of the bouncers whistles over to a cop car down the block, and within seconds, the police pull up. And my roommate and I are just standing there, watching all of this unfold. They cuff Aaron and put him in the back of the squad car. And here's the kicker, the most absurd part of it all. The instant karma. The cop car remained parked directly outside of Mondays, maybe 8 feet away from us. So for the next 3 hours, Aaron is just sitting there, handcuffed, in the back of the police car, staring through the window, while we continue having fun inside the bar. The whole situation felt so crazy and surreal. Aaron's behavior escalated so quickly, and my roommate and I went from having fun to feeling awkward to feeling scared to enjoying the instant karma that Aaron got. But on a deeper level, I can't help but feel like a lot of Aaron's behavior was rooted in what he had internalized masculinity was supposed to look like. Things like aggression towards other men to establish dominance, possessiveness over women, and even emotional intimidation. Even something as small and symbolic as rejecting the peach Ciroc shots and insisting on ordering a whiskey instead. And the irony of the whole situation is that Shots guy actually had a way more masculine presence, because he was calm, he was composed, and generous. He tried to de-escalate the situation multiple times. He wasn't threatened by anyone. He didn't need to put on this performance of dominance. He just was. Whereas Aaron's behavior felt like deep insecurity masquerading as power. And another thing this experience made me think about is the danger of building fantasies around people you barely know. Because Aaron honestly knew almost nothing about me or my roommate as actual human beings. Yet, somehow, he had already developed this bizarre sense of possessiveness over us. I think sometimes people become attached not to who someone actually is, but to the fantasy, projection, or emotional role they've assigned to that person in their own mind. And when reality disrupts that fantasy, the reaction can become irrational really quickly. And if I take a step back and look at all three of these stories together, there are some really similar themes that keep surfacing for me. Because I think some people build a huge portion of their self-worth around being chosen, being desired, being validated. So rejection doesn't just feel disappointing, it feels identity threatening. And I honestly wonder what creates that level of fragility. Because obviously, rejection never feels good. That's human. But emotionally healthy people usually experience rejection as temporary disappointment, and then eventually they redirect their energy elsewhere. Whereas in all three of these situations, the reactions felt so much bigger than the actual circumstances themselves. And when I think specifically about the men in these stories, I sometimes wonder whether men in our society are socialized to externalize pain instead of processing vulnerability directly. Because here, disappointment got expressed as anger, possessiveness, and aggression, and control. And another pattern I notice across all three experiences was this underlying attitude of, I want you, therefore I deserve access to you. And that mindset honestly confuses me, because what about what the other person wants? Their feelings, their autonomy? At certain points, it stops feeling like romantic pursuit and starts feeling more like entitlement. And something these experiences changed for me personally was the way I moved socially through the world after. I think I became more guarded. I started overthinking friendliness. I found myself wondering whether basic kindness, like smiling at someone, being conversational, holding the door open, would be interpreted as romantic interest. And sometimes I even catch myself subconsciously managing how men around me might emotionally react to my behavior, which honestly is not a very freeing way to move through the world. But at the same time, I also think rejection is something every single human being inevitably experiences. Even the most attractive people, the most successful people, the most charismatic people, no one is going to get chosen by everyone. And I think part of emotional maturity is learning how to tolerate rejection without allowing it to completely destabilize your identity. Because a no may not be the answer we want in the moment, but it's also what eventually allows for a genuine, enthusiastic yes to actually mean something. So I think I want to end this episode a little differently and just leave you guys with a few questions that I've honestly been thinking about a lot myself. Why do some people experience rejection as disappointment while other people experience it as humiliation? At what point does romantic pursuit stop being romantic and start becoming entitlement? Can men and women genuinely be close platonic friends long term without one person developing feelings? Are men socialized to externalize emotional pain differently than women are? And how do experiences like these shape the way that women move through the world socially over time? Because I don't think these situations exist in isolation. I think they shape how people date, how people trust, how people communicate, how guarded they become, how vulnerable they allow themselves to be. I don't know if there are clean answers to any of these questions, but I do think they're worth thinking about and maybe discussing. Thanks for listening. I'm Dina, and this is Casually Thriving.